Now what we're going to do today is we're going to have a series of lectures by various lecturers in the department and outside FADA. And each lecturer has been asked to speak to some of the problematics and issues that the project raises. Okay? And the idea behind the lectures today is not for you to necessarily sit down and just absorb these ideas. And to kind of write down everything that the lecturer says. That's not what today is about. Today's lectures are really provocations to you, questions that we're asking you. We're going to be posing problems and raising issues and pointing towards problems. And we expect you to think through these problems and to interrogate these issues over the course of the project. Okay. Because as I'm sure you all saw from the brief, major components of this brief is the designer as a reflective researcher. Right, so we're looking at the relationship between design, research, and then very important communities. All right, so it's the relationship between those three concepts. And the brief is asking you to work in a group to develop a thoughtful design intervention, all right, that can be taken on for the next 5 years. The dialogue with the communities continues. All right, so we've got a really excellent lineup today. You'll see in the brief, I think it's on page 3, we've got a lineup. We're not going to follow the times absolutely, but if I can just encourage the presenters to please stick to the 15-minute time limit. I'm going to cut you off at 15 minutes. All right, not going to go past 15 minutes at all, because we want to fit in all the presentations today. We do have a space for a discussion that would be after Angus presents. There's a Q&A, but we're also going to speak about the brief in that time as well. Then we'll have our next 3 or 4 presentations, and between 10 past 3 and 4:30, I think is the time that we're really going to get into the brief and deal with some of the nitty-gritties that are there. Okay, is this all acceptable? Are you all happy with that? Okay, so let's look at the lineup.
I hope you spoke about each of your experiences in the different areas. It's always useful. It's a pity we have a time constraint. It would have been wonderful for everybody to be both and get a better idea about the 2 different communities, because they are distinctly different. And I'm just going to try and sum up and look at the sites and try and guide, or maybe make your choice of site a bit easier. I've got a hand out. The first page is for the people who went to FITAS. The second page is for the people who went to Westbury. So if you can just separate them and keep the one that is relevant to you, and pass the rest along. Okay, now for the people, I expect a lot of questions about the sites. We've pointed out quite a number of things. And it is important that you ask, as I said yesterday, for me, it's useless exposing you to a site that you're not interested in, or it doesn't tickle your fancy, or you're not able to sufficiently express yourself through that site. The site where we started out. And I think around each of these sites there are organizations that operate at different levels, some very remotely because they don't exist or they don't operate or live in the area, the members don't live there, as in the case of the Heritage Foundation people and the FITAS Festival Committee people. But I think for most of the sites, they will be key. Each of them offer something quite different. And as I said to you people yesterday, that every time I go there, I've been going there. I lived there when I was young. I've been going there often, at least 3 or 4 times a month. And every time I go there, there's a surprise. Yesterday, the surprise was the Buddhist Center. Did you enjoy that? Did you enjoy the Buddhist Center, the space within this seemingly depressed community, and we have this oasis, more or less, of spiritual intervention that makes a difference. So those are the kinds of things that the area sort of offers. Just once again, an overall overview of FITAS. Sorry, I'm taking my time. The historical factor is quite important, and it is always nice to weave in that historical factors within your choice of site should look at that aspect and try and bring that to the fore. Because part of what people are doing in these areas, in these communities, is looking at what the community memory of those areas are, and how they can be expressed and given contemporary relevance in new research, creating new knowledge about the area, doing things differently that you will be doing in a few years' time. So, coming to Westbury, it's quite different. Westbury, we met with organizations who are doing interesting things. We've got also a historic community which transformed from a sapphire town where people lived similar to the situation in FITAS. It became Western Native Township, Western Colour Township, and now it's just called Westbury. And the metamorphosis from each to the other is brought with it the problems from the previous phase, and one can see the stark sort of realities of what that has produced in terms of that society. We met very interesting organizations, and I think we didn't look at many sites in Westbury as we did in FITAS, but the organizations should give you an idea. I think the school itself and that space and the way it is used by one organization that spawned a number of other organizations is interesting. There are a number of interesting projects, visual arts projects, computer projects, and there's even a radio station housed in that complex. And it's interesting that many of the youth are seeing that opportunity and they're using that medium to reach out to people. Then we met a very interesting person, Mrs. Daniel, who within herself is an institution. She's going to be 90 years old next month. And just a wealth of information. The value of Mrs. Daniels' work is in the fact that she has collected almost every single article, newspaper clipping that she was ever involved in and that ever happened in that geographic area and beyond. So it is an enormous project waiting to happen. We can take little bites of the project and do some things with some of the things that she's accumulated. And more importantly, the opportunity to speak to someone who has lived through various epochs or eras of our country's history and can relate to each of them the different challenges that communities face. So when we design for communities, the one thing that we must never forget is we didn't come here onto a clean slate. It's got that history and baggage that we have to take into account. And how we look at that is going to determine the way we respond to it. Just by way of example, in terms of our broader national question, in terms of how the problems of the past are being negotiated presently, purely or essentially through legislation and policy, and those policies will determine how development is going to occur in communities. So at one level, we've got policymakers whose language at present is people-centered. We've got to look at people, which is correct. We've got to, the most important component in any development is that you are developing that for the use of people, and therefore they should be at the forefront of your policy. But then your policy is not enough. It's got to be transferred into action. So when that happens, we can then criticize the policy through our action, if that makes sense to you. In other words, let me be more practical. We've got presently guiding all policy in South Africa would be the Constitution, which I believe everyone should have a copy of, and more recently the National Development Plan. Now, I'm just going to touch on that. I'm not going to do a whole thing on the National Development Plan. I just want to draw your attention to that. it talks about a range of things and a range of issues that impacts on spatial development, that impacts on people development. And many people find fault, rightfully so. We've got to criticize it all the time, with the way it was constructed, the people who put it together, and also the big criticism is that it was not negotiated with communities on the ground. All that may be true, but for the next foreseeable future, we are stuck with this. And if we're going to do something here, we need to criticize this in our action. In other words, it's got to be in a positive way, because Mrs. Daniel said a very important thing yesterday. She said, confrontation and bekledering, she said, ga jou nergens bring nie. It's not going to take you anywhere to be confrontational in the work that you do, but your action should criticize the policies. Doesn't mean we must not be critical and think critically about how we're going to do design. So it raises a number of questions, and I believe that much of the policy is based on that. And therefore, whatever we do with communities at the local level, the integrated development plans, and the rest of it, the people who present that and bring that together, they use these instruments as their guidelines. So therefore, we need to know that, and when we look at how we're going to try and change things in communities and work with community organizations, we must always be aware of that. Coming back to some of the projects that are possible, there's a lot happening in Westbury. And there's a lot of opportunity for us to make an impact as an institution and you as individuals who are going to work with those organizations. I hope that you choose carefully which ones you want to work with and what you want to do with them. Some of them have done things in the past, and it's hanging in the air because they don't have resources. But the ethos within which the people at the center work, like Reggie, who says we do things and then people take notice. Can you remember that, those who were in Westbury yesterday? He said a very important thing there. Somebody asked him, why aren't you being funded? It's natural that something like this should apply for major funding to get a youth project off the ground. And they've worked the other way around. That was his answer. We do things, we show that it can work, and then the people through their CSI, the corporate social responsibility and investment programs, are attracted to something that works. So that's something you need to keep in mind. So some of the things you must also look at is it going to be pure advocacy? What change are we going to make? Are we going to help the organization advocate for better resources for that organization? Is it impacting broadly on community? Are we taking people with the project, or are we just doing this to get our score and get out of it? Those are the kinds of questions you have to ask yourself and answer as well. Some of the interesting things are very peculiar to each of the areas. So you're welcome after these sessions today to, if once you have identified your site, or if you need help in doing that, you can come and talk to us, and let's see how your idea can be formulated to be of maximum value. Some of the organizations there who are historic, there was a newspaper called Speed. They've put together something like this with the idea, and they've raised funds for it. So some of you can get involved in a community newspaper that speaks about the kind of things that you are doing. Institutions coming into communities and doing things with communities in a different way towards different objectives. There's also something called which straddles both communities, in fact all communities in Johannesburg. It's called the Legacy Project, where a group of people are looking at people who have made a difference. And the first person, by the way, that was honored in December last year was Mrs. Daniels, the person that you met yesterday, for the work that she's done in the community and the impact that work has had throughout the various stages that the community has gone through. So those are the kinds of things that you can get involved with. And you can strengthen the work that those organizations are doing. I think I've got 2 minutes left. If you need any assistance in choosing or refining your ideas, I'm sure your lecturers are going to assist with that. If you need any assistance with the site, per se, that's my job. You can talk to me, we can talk about it, and we can look at the angle that you want to approach. Thanks. I look forward to lots of questions later on.